G'day guys, Wearman here, welcome back to the workshop. So, I'm back by myself. I've come back to the original workshop for a little bit to make a couple of longer form videos, audio clips, whatever you want to call them. What I want to talk about today is tactics, and you've probably clicked on this because the whatever pillars probably put some awesome title on there about how I'm going to discuss tactics, and it's kind of true, but there's some big asterisks there for you to have a look at first. So this is me discussing tactics. First of all, I have a couple of disclaimers. Okay, one, I am not a BattleTech guru. I am not a BattleTech aficionado. I am not a professional. I am at best an enthusiastic amateur, shall we say. Okay? Tactical games are not my strong suit. I am not fantastic at those sort of things, but the reason I play a lot of turn-based tactical games and deck building games and that sort of thing is because I am not very good at them and because I want to get better at them. And I've improved a lot over the years. Okay? But you need to take this with a big grain of salt. Okay? Because it's not my forte. Pillar has mentioned a few times that we should discuss the tactics as we're playing the game, and that is actually a really good idea, but I'm not going to do it because I don't want to have all the extra stuff that goes along with that, right? Either you sit there in the game and discuss your tactics and therefore give away your tactics to the person you're playing against, which doesn't seem like a good idea, or we go through a lot of extra bollocks with like moving to different rooms and recording separate things, or taking copious notes and photographs and things and trying to discuss it after the fact. Okay? Neither of them really appeal to me. So I thought with a few comments out there, which a couple of which I want to discuss at some point, that are mentioning tactics, I think it's probably a good idea that I just go through what I think of it so you can kind of have an idea of what's going on my head while I'm playing a battle. So that's this. The other disclaimer is the mistakes. There will be mistakes in basically everything I do, including the audio, for multiple reasons. One of them is that I am not researching these things. I'm not sitting down for days, and in like Big Red's case, and I think MechFrog as well, they can take months, weeks, months to research and put together a script for a video. These aren't scripted. I'm not trying to like read off a sheet or anything like that. I've got a couple of notes on the pad here because I kept stuffing up the order I wanted to do things in, but I'm not doing that. So there will be mistakes because of that. There will be mistakes because public speaking is one of my all-time worst fears. It is horrific for me. Being on video is not quite that bad, but it is still, like, it's near enough that it pushes a lot of the same buttons, but it's far enough away that I am capable of doing it. But there will be slip-ups, there will be problems. The vast majority of them will just be slightly longer than normal pauses, which are being cut out. Pillar's cutting them out anyway. Some of them will be very, very minor things. I'll forget what 6 times 7 is, or how to divide something by 10, which is incredibly embarrassing, but it isn't a big deal. I just whip my calculator out or make Adam do the maths, right? And some of them will be like reading the wrong word, reading a paragraph the wrong way, and some of them will be retaining information or recalling information from my head. And there was an example of that, and Spartner pointed it out. Thanks, mate. I am not having a go at anybody here. I'm not going to like diss on people for putting comments down. If I have a brain fart, please point it out, okay? He pointed out with the Archer that they are quite actually well armoured, right? There's almost full coverage for a 70-ton mech, 208 points out of 217. 9 points shy of a full coverage for that size unit, right? So yeah, if you see one of them, I know for a fact that there's a couple more out there that you guys might not spot because they're to do with, one was to do with a mobile fortress, which is not readily available information, and the other one was, I can't remember. There was another one that I know I made, but that didn't get picked up. But like I say, please double check your information so we're not giving new players incorrect information multiple times. But other than that, that's it. All right, so that's the disclaimer. Okay, part 2, tactics. To me, on a base level, the bottom level here, for especially new players, but also I think basically everybody, the way you approach the game is entirely up to you. That how you play the game, how you like formulate any sort of battle strategy on a large scale, and how you cope with the game moment to moment is entirely up to you. You can follow advice like mine. You can look at other gamer channels that have BattleTech on them and listen to their tactical stuff and take it in. It is all advice, right? Treat it all as advice, even if they're numerical and they're giving you like optimal builds for things and all that sort of stuff, like the DFA guys. And I saw somebody that was like nerdy overanalyzed or something, was going through with spreadsheets and stuff. They're very cool. They're interesting. They're not how I approach it, right? And that's fine. It doesn't have to be how you approach it for it to be interesting and even informative, right? So take them, watch them, but take it in as advice, okay? Because how you approach it is up to you. For me, when you are, if you want to have an overall plan for a battle, that starts, that the overall battle plan starts when you get the mission. When you have your scenario sheet, when you get the PDF and the email that tells you your force building, your objectives, that sort of thing. That is where you start building a plan. And you can't really build a proper plan until you have that. Okay, you can come up with an idea. Like you can say, right, I want to go assault this time, or I want to have lots of missiles this time, or I want to go all ballistic this time. You can do that sort of thing, but you can't really come up with a concrete, this is how I'm going to approach this mission, until you have the mission, right? That's just how that works. Once you have your scenario, you can build a fairly comprehensive idea of how you want to approach the battle. You can also kind of think about how you want to do minute to minute, like turn to turn maneuvering and stuff. But the important things are your objectives, whether that be win-loss conditions or how you gather victory points and what you need to do to gather those victory points. And the other important thing is your force building restrictions. And for those of you out there, like if you're wondering why force building restrictions are important, I mean, objectives and victory point tallies are fairly obviously, this is how you win, okay? But your force building restricts how you go about winning that, right? It restricts the sort of tactical turn-to-turn options that you can have, okay? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Let's say you've got everybody out there, just think about this for a second. How would you approach a game where you have a force building section that says you're doing a death match, say, and your force building is a 4,000 BV. You're allowed one unit and one unit only, but it can be anything you want, any tech level, any tech base, any part of the timeline. You can build it from scratch if you want to. You can modify existing units, or you can take a stock unit. You can build anything you want, but you have to have it a max of 4,000 BV and only one unit. And it's a death match. Last man standing wins, okay? Take that in and tell me, like, think about what that unit would be. Think about how you're approaching that game. Think about how you're approaching the force, the unit that you're going to build, right? So I've probably got a really out there clan unit, inner sphere unit. Like I'd probably go mixed tech, high level, experimental, lots of weird ammo and stuff, but lots of electronica and lots of defensive units, like defensive stuff, like so anti-missile systems, maybe some hardened armor, maybe some reinforced equipment, that sort of stuff. And I'd probably be medium to heavy and pushing the skills up as high as I can, or as improved as I can, so low, technically, right? And that would be my approach. I think we've all spotted that I like to have a skilled unit in a skilled pilot or crew in a crappy unit, as opposed to a really U-Butte technically advanced unit with a crappy crew, right? That is my approach. That is how I like to do it. It's been pointed out that can involve all your eggs in one basket, and that is absolutely valid. That is what happens, okay? It doesn't have to happen every time, but it does happen quite a lot, right? If I'm honest. Personally, I think if your basket is good enough, your eggs are going to be okay. But sometimes it backfires. And that is the thing. You have to be willing to lose if you're going to approach your games with a suboptimal approach. That is not like super bad, but it is suboptimal. Okay, having a 0-0 pilot in one thing, as opposed to say 2-2-2 pilots or 2-2-4 pilots, or even 5 or 6 4-5 pilots, right? It's suboptimal, but it's not as bad as say like taking all 6-6 pilots and hoping that I get a hit or something like that, right? It's not optimal, but it isn't super bad. But if you take that and then I tell you that instead of that, we're going to do 2000 BV with like a scout component. So you've got to go and multiple point captures within a certain turn limit. The two forces are going to be different. The two mission parameters are different. Your objectives are different. And your moment-to-moment gameplay is going to be different, right? So the scenario is very important to your... It really influences the tactics that you're going to employ, okay? A lot of these things are still going to be roughly the same, and I'll get into that in a second, but the gameplay is very heavily influenced by the scenario that you have. So for new players, my advice for that is to, one, make sure you read the scenario thoroughly. Make sure you understand how it is, and make sure if you do not understand or you're not 100% sure, ask somebody, right? Talk to somebody. Talk to who made the scenario, or talk to the people that you're playing with or against, and make sure that you understand how the scenario is supposed to work. Make sure you clarify anything that you think needs it, and that you follow what's happening in the scenario. The other thing is to make sure you know your house rules, okay? Make sure you know what house rules are going to apply. The rule of two is a big one. You can make a big difference if you follow or don't follow something like the rule of two. It can make a big difference. For those of you that maybe don't know, I know we've mentioned this a few times, but the rule of two, basically you are supposed to keep your piloting and gunnery skills within 2 points of each other. I don't know if we ever made that clear, but that's what I'm talking about when I say rule of two, okay? But some game groups, some clubs will have different rules that they use. Some of them will always have floating crits. Some of them will always have rapid fire. Some of them will always have like all sorts of stuff. You've seen our workshop videos. You've seen that there's heaps of optional rules. House rules will influence your ability to play the game as well. So if you are new to a club, ask people what the house rules are. Okay, they will influence your tactics. Trust me. Okay, so that's the overview for everybody. So let's look at how I approach this. I've got You could think of them as foundational and you build on them. You could think of them as default positions and then you move your position based on other variables. You can think of them as like basic things, instinctive reactions, that sort of thing, right? These are the foundational things that come up in BattleTech. I've got a few of them, and some of them are more like I can't really articulate what I mean when I'm talking about them, but there's a few that I can, and so I'm going to put them out there, and hopefully some of you guys, especially the more veteran players, will have some. Once you hear me talk about these, you might have some foundational things of your own, some base level, some default process things that you can point out to some of the newer players and have them think about them as well. For me, things that are base level, that are foundational, they are the things that kind of pop up into your head when you make a move, or when it's your turn to shoot, or when it's your turn to do something. You're having these things. They're the first thing you think about every time, right? And then you modify it for circumstances. You modify it for what you think is going on, what you can see about the battlefield, what's happening, what sort of modifiers any specific unit is carrying, or damage that they've got, that sort of thing. And that kind of takes that base foundational thing and builds up on it. It takes that first line of code and puts lots of if then else's like looping off it, right? It opens a lot of brackets on there. It takes that default thought process and filters it through the things that you know about the battlefield, and gets down to a more nuanced and refined version of it, right? So the types of things I mean for foundational tactics, foundational thoughts, the main one that'll come up a lot is focus fire. If you are playing BattleTech, if you are watching BattleTech videos, if you are watching BattleTech gameplay videos and you haven't heard someone say focus fire, or thought to yourself while you're playing it, focus fire, or heard your opponent say focus fire, then you haven't played enough BattleTech, because it's a thing that will come up, especially in the sphere players, but everybody will have this thought come up in their head eventually. Focus fire is basically just, you have a target, you have a prime target, you have a thing that you want to stop being a problem, right? Your prime target gets all of the fire that you can put on it to put it down quickly. And part of the reason you do that is because you don't want it running around completing its objective. Part of the reason is the timing in BattleTech is that if you're in the weapon attack phase, everyone in the weapon attack phase gets a chance to shoot, which means that BattleTech is a turn-based game where everybody gets a chance to shoot back. Okay, there are games and turn-based games where damage is applied instantly rather than at the end of the turn. And so if you can take something out quickly with your first units to act, it doesn't get a chance to shoot back at you. That is not the case with BattleTech. Everything gets a chance to shoot in the weapon attack phase, and all of the effects are applied at the end, which means your enemy always gets a chance to shoot back at you. So if you have something that you need to put to drop, you need to kill, you focus your fire on it, you kill it as quickly as you can, and you stop it having a chance to shoot back at you, right? I'm working on my nuance for that. And the nuance is knowing how much fire is enough fire to focus. Knowing what fire you should focus and what fire is pointless, right? If you've got a dasher and he's there and you've got some units that can get good solid target numbers on him, then focus their fire on him. But if you've got units that have like 12s to hit him and there's other enemies around the place, then maybe their fire would be better off somewhere else, right? So he's the main objective. He's the prime target. He's the one that's going to run past you and get the points and complete the game. And sure, a couple of those 12s might be like really good to put on him anyway, but I'm working on my ability to nuance that and say, look, not necessarily important to put all of that fire on him, right? There are other units that can complete objectives. There are the other units that can win the game for the enemy. I need to think really hard about which fire I'm putting out. I'm not actually that good at it yet. I'm still tending to just focus fire and put it all on that one thing and hope that I hit, because I know that I'm generally going to miss, and that's the problem. But I consider focus fire a foundational thought, a base level thing, right? One that I've developed over the course of BattleTech that I try to bring up into my head now that I consider a foundational thing is the largest, most horribly beweaponed thing is not necessarily your prime target, right? So focus fire, prime target. The biggest, baddest thing there is not always your prime target. So let's say you're doing a retrieval mission, right? Essentially capture the flag. You have to go to an area, pick a thing up, take it away, right? You're defending it, and there's 3 units coming at you. There's a stalker, there's like a stinger or a wasp or a wraith or something light and fast, and there's a griffin, right? Now, the stalker is big, and it is nasty, and it will kill you if it gets a chance to shoot at you. But it is not your prime target, okay? It doesn't have hands. It cannot complete the objective. It cannot win the game for your enemy, right? Your opponent cannot win if the only thing left standing is a stalker. So it is not your prime target. Now, if it's the only one you can see, then yes, sure, shoot at him, focus your fire, drop him, get him down, and go after the other 2. But he is not your prime target. You want to be trying to take out the 2 with the hands that can actually win the game. And I know that sounds obvious. I know that seems like it's just silly. Why am I even thinking this? That should be in the top of your head anyway. But this is the point. I need to keep this in the top of my head because I have a tendency to focus my fire, and sometimes I focus it on the wrong things. So this has been one that comes up for me a lot. For newer players, you might want to just remind yourself of this a few times, and then it will become like a background thing that you don't even think about anymore. It just happens, right? Now, there's one that I want to give that was an example that I think, this is a very important base level foundational thing that you then build on. And I think it's a really good example of how I build on it, onto the foundation, like how I build onto that foundation, okay? So the foundational thing that somebody actually mentioned in a comment, Mikey mentioned this in a comment. I'm going to bring it up actually because he puts it pretty much perfectly. But we were playing the, which one was it? It was the vehicle combat one. So I had my vehicles and Adam had his Adam had a, he had a Dragonfly D and a Cauldron-born C. Okay, and I had my, if you remember, the Mongrel Assault Tank, the tracked one, which had the dual turrets, and the Honey Badger, which was the wheeled one that had the single turret with the Act-10 and some lasers and stuff. Now, I'm going to read you this comment. I just found it. So Mikey said, when facing a target that is hard to hit and it stops for a moment, focus your fire. Okay? 100% agree with you. Absolutely. That is the foundation upon which you build, right? It is the base level. It should pop in your head every time, okay? And it was almost verbatim. That is exactly what I said to myself while I was playing the game. When I saw his Dragonfly not get that, I mean, he can move at 8, 12, 8. So he can technically get a 4. Yeah, 4 on a regular basis. He's generally probably only going to get a 3, but he can technically get a 4. If he can move at least 10 hexes, he gets a 4. But let's be like devil's advocate here. Let's just say, well, he's probably going to have to maneuver at least a couple of times. He is going to be able to regularly get a 3. And that +3 is not good, right? That can mess you up. If you've got an average pilot, that starts you at a 7, right? And then you've got your movement, you've got range, you've got all the other stuff that adds on to that. So that +3 is not good. I think he either stood still or only generated like a 1, or he like turned around or something like that and didn't generate more than a 1, maybe a 0. And so, yes, the first thing that popped in my head, the foundational thing, the block that I was going to build the rest of this on was, when a fast thing goes slow, shoot it, right? Now, here's how I modified it. I don't think I was actually in the right on one of these modifiers, but I think I had the right idea on the next one. And like Mike said, it was still, I won anyway, so yay. But if I want to improve my game, these are the things that I have to pick up on and think about, right? So, now, yes, the fast thing went slow. He becomes prime target, but I'm in vehicles. Any of you who have been playing BattleTech for a while, or have been watching and reading, listening to our audio stuff, will know the bane of vehicles is locations. It isn't necessarily damage. You can do 1 or 2 points at a time with these things, but the more times you get to roll on that location chart, the more chance you have to just wipe that vehicle out or immobilize it or cripple it with very little damage actually done, okay? And in my head, and this is the one where I think I kind of went wrong, the Viper, the D, has the potential for 10 locations. That is the most location. If he hits with everything, he can generate 10 locations. That is not good. That is not by any stretch of the imagination a cool thing. I'm not happy about that. But the Cauldron Born, if he hits with everything and gets full like cluster rolls and things, he can generate up to 22 locations. 22. Right? That's more than double the amount that Dragonfly can generate. He'd already absolutely massacred my the tracked one, the mongrel. Right? It was immobilized. The tracks had been destroyed, I'm pretty sure, and one of the turrets had locked up or something like that. So I think the top turret had locked. Right, so 22, potentially 22 more locations was bad. I did not want that, right? And so I took the opportunity to destroy the big thing that was doing lots of locations rather than the fast thing that had gone slow. Now, I don't think I was right in that particular thing. I think I was close, but I don't think that was really a good reason to change. I'll get to the good reason in a second, but the Cauldron Born can generate 22, but generally speaking, it's going to generate a lot less than that, right? If he rolls average for all of his stuff, he's got 2 of those, so average would be 8, and then it would be 6, so it would be 14, 15, 16. 16 locations. So if he rolls on average and he's hit with everything and he's decided to ultra with the autocannons and he didn't get a 2, then he can generate the 16. If he misses with any of those, then he's probably going to be generating less than 10, right? It's only if he hits with everything, he's decided to do ultra, and he gets really good cluster rolls that he's doing his more than 22. Whereas with the Viper, because of that streak technology and the fact that some of his hits are lasers, if he hits, he's generating 6 locations automatically with that streak, and then the other 4 are coming along assuming he hits with them. Right, but that streak is 6 automatically, right? Whereas with some of the other ones, he could generate as low as 1 or 2, right? You see what I mean? If he doesn't roll really well, then on average, the Dragonfly is probably going to be doing more locations than the Cauldron Born. So I think Mikey was right there. I think I should have gone for the Dragonfly based on the locations that they're generating, right? I think that was slightly flawed planning there. But like I say, being on camera, sometimes I have these mental blanks. The reason why I think I was still right to modify it, or to choose the way I did, was the modification of my approach to the game, which is that I had 2 not terribly sophisticated units, but with very, very good crews in them. Remember, my mongrel that I've got that was technically very, very damaged and immobilized still had a 2-4 crew in it. It was still technically operational, it just couldn't move, and one of the turrets was locked. But it still had a lot of firepower it could bring to bear with a 2 crew, right? And in the Act 5, which was on the front turret, which I think was the one that was not locked, that one was firing with precision ammo, which knocks 2 points off a target movement modifier. So if that Dragonfly had a 3, I'm knocking 2 off of that with the Act 5 ammo. So it's still only a 1 onto my 2. I'm only starting with a 3. I'm not going anywhere, right? So that's a 3. If I can keep him within short or medium range, I'm still hitting him on 5s. I'm doing all right there, right? And I'm doing even better with the Honey Badger, because the Honey Badger was completely undamaged. Adam hadn't hit it with anything, right? And it's a 0-0 crew with a targeting computer. So honestly, I'm more than happy to chase down that Dragonfly that's doing a 4 for its, like a regularly a 3, but could get a 4. Even if it gets that 4, I'm still more than happy to chase after it with my guys. I'm hitting it on very low numbers, even with that high movement modifier. So I think that was the one that I like thought, and that would actually justify what I did. But the other one was the locations, and like I say, I think I kind of overestimated how bad those locations would be, but I think it was justification for that. Bear in mind, there is no need for anybody to justify their tactics to anyone. And like I say, I'm not hacking on Mikey here. He is 100% correct there. If you new players out there are looking for tactics, that, boom, bang. If it's normally fast and it goes slow, shoot it. That is 100% a foundation. That is 100% a thing that should come up in your head every time you see someone do that. Then you think about what's happening, what sort of target numbers you've got, what sort of objectives are happening, and what you need to do to accomplish them, and what your opponent needs to do to accomplish his. And then you see if that still makes it the prime target, right? If it's still the prime target, boom, bang, get him, right? But he jumps up the list when you see that happen, right? Okay. I am still waffling, but I think we're getting across a lot more of the points. So that's kind of really the only ones I can really like articulate as foundational things. One more that would be, I don't know if this really counts, but I've written it down, so I'm gonna talk about it. So the other like foundational thing that I'm talking about here, which kind of ties into that the tirade I've just gone on about with the fast thing moving slow, is essentially what you're trying to do here is get your target number as low as possible and your enemy's target number as high as possible. Now that can influence you in a lot of ways. You might use a different movement type, right? Things that can only jump 2, like the urban mechs in our prison break scenario. They were only jumping 2. Jumping 2 is pointless. In a game in a metagaming perspective, jumping 2 is pointless. Right? If you aren't jumping at least 3, or, well, you need to build up at least a 3 for your target number. So you're needing to jump at least 5. Right? Because you're building up a 2 for the actual distance, plus 1 because you jumped. Right? That isn't necessarily true, but numerically, you're going to be giving yourself a plus 3 to your target number for jumping. If you're only giving your enemy a plus 1 or a plus 2, then what's the point? Why are you doing it, right? Now, that said, I know exactly why I'm doing it, because sometimes it's necessary, okay? But if you think about that, then maybe if you can get to the same point by running or by walking, then maybe that's a better way to do it. So you want to be choosing the movement type that gives you the best advantage and gives your enemy the best disadvantage. Do you see what I mean? Is that I don't know if it's clear, but that to me kind of is the sort of foundational thing. It's not one of those thoughts that pops up in your head instantly, like focus fire or the fast thing when slow kill it. But it's one that is kind of, it should be in the back of your head all the time, because that is essentially what you're trying to do. You are trying to get your target number as low as possible and your enemy's target number as high as possible. And you're trying to pick ranges, movement types, weapon groupings, that sort of thing that help you do that, okay? And so off the back of that, I want to discuss one more comment that I saw that kind of was a tactical thing that I thought was interesting and that I wanted to discuss my reasoning for it, okay? And again, before I go into this, I'm going to stress that this is all my opinion only. This is how I approach the game. I'm not having a go at anybody. I'm not telling anybody they're wrong. If you want to approach it that way, that is how you do it. It is fine, okay? Go for it. So, this one came up on the Mad Cat Money videos. I don't know if you guys have seen them. If you haven't watched them, I just go through the 24 million C-bills that you spend on a single Mad Cat, and I tried to make Innisphere forces for them, and I kept it to 30-25. Somebody pointed out that once you get into more fancy units, higher tech units, you'll probably see that disparity kind of shrink a little bit. And I mean, if you want to see that, I'm more than happy to go through and do it. I might do it anyway, but yeah. In the last one of those, the fourth one of those, I toned it down a little bit and I bought some like bigger units. And I only ended up with 2 Lancers, and one of them included an awesome Marauder and a Hatchet Man. Now, there was a Catapult and a Locust with like 3 Savannah Masters, but we're going to ignore them for now. We're just going to focus on the 3, because the comment that I'm talking about here was from Derek. G'day, matey. I do wonder about the choice of the Marauder advancing instead of the Awesome. The Awesome is way more likely to survive incoming fire long enough to survive as a real distraction. The Marauder seems to me like it'll crumble before it can pay for itself. Very good point, right? Very good point. And that is a completely valid way to approach that scenario. What I want to do is show you why I do it my way. And then you can decide for yourself, okay? Like I say, I'm not having a go at Derek. He's watching, he's commenting, he's thinking about stuff. Good on him, right? And like I say, that is an absolutely valid approach, okay? What I've got here, I'm kind of going to focus on the Mad Cat and the Awesome, but I've got Mega Mech Lab up. So I'm going to bring the Marauder up so I can remember, because I think it's got better, I'm fairly sure I looked this up, and it's got better armor than the Awesome, but only in certain points. So let's just have a quick look. I think that's the right one there. That's 30-39. I want the 30-25. No, the 3R is the right one, isn't it? PPC Zach 5. Yeah, I think that's the right one. Yeah, so the Awesome has 30 points on his center torso, 24 on the right and left, and the arms have 24 each, and the legs have 33. Okay, rear torsos are 19 the center and 10 left and right. Okay, the Marauder actually has slightly better armor in certain places. Right? So he's got 35 in the center torso, and yeah, that's better than the 30, but he's got 10 on the rear, which is worse than the 19. Okay, he's got 17 in the right and left torsos, which is a lot worse. That's about 7 points less. And then he's only got 8 in the rear torso, left and right, which is 2 points less. He's got 22 in the arms, which is a little less. And he's got 18 in the legs, which is way less, right? So I agree with you. He would probably be better up there if he can find cover for those legs, partial cover for those legs. So stand behind a hill, right? But if he gets hit in those torsos, he's not going to tank quite as well as an Awesome, right? But let's look at how I use my Awesomes, okay? So the Marauder could 100% switch places with the Awesome, and it would be fine, absolutely fine, right? It might even be a really good idea if you can get him into partial cover. So you'll get the +1 for the hill, or you could put him in things, but that partial cover from that hill means that he's not taking hits to those vulnerable legs, okay? And they are vulnerable. The Awesome's legs are 33 points, and the right and left legs of the Marauder have only got 18. That's like half, nearly half, right? So, yeah. He's also got way less overall. The Awesome has 240 overall, and the Marauder's only got 184. So yeah. But the thing that I do with my Awesomes, if you guys watch, I'm sure some of you have watched it. Derek, you might even have watched it. The C3 capture video that we did, the battle report that we did, where Adam had C3 units and I had some 30-25 units that I was trying to blow up. Now, I don't remember specifically what happened, but I'm pretty sure I used my Awesome the way I always use my Awesomes. That is what I use my Awesomes for, right? He has the frontal armor to take, he can tank hits, right? You are absolutely correct. For me, they don't have the maneuverability to mix it up with a Mad Cat. So the Awesome is a 3-5, and the Mad Cat is a 5-8, right? Now, if you do it the way I'm thinking of doing it, which is not necessarily getting into close combat and mixing it up, what I'm using those flanking units for more is to get the Mad Cat to focus on one of them, so that at least one of the other 2 units that I'm using has access to rear armor. If I've got access to rear armor, I can bring the unit down quicker. I can, if I have to, core it out, but cripple it faster and mercenary mind, thereby get slightly more salvage, right? But dropping it faster is a good idea, and having 3 points of attack where the Mad Cat has to focus on 1 or maybe 2 of them gives 1 or 2 of them access to its rear armor, right? So I'm not necessarily trying to get them in and get them in like point blank range. I'm trying to get him to focus on one of them so that I can then maneuver around and get shots on rear or vulnerable at least, right? So it isn't necessarily a case of the BattleTech Congo, which is a thing that happens all the time. If you don't know what it is, just play some more BattleTech, you'll see it happen. Excuse me, hiccups. But what I'm trying to do is just flank and get maybe short-range shots when I send the Marauder down there. If I send the Awesome down there, because the Marauder is a 4-6, It's still not as maneuverable as the Mad Cat. It's not as fast as a Mad Cat, but it's closer, right? The Mad Cat can walk as fast as an Awesome can run. If I am in that Mad Cat and the Marauder and the Hatchet Man come down the way I think I'm doing it, right? I'm going after the Marauder. I'm getting myself into blocking terrain from that Awesome, and I'm trying to take out either the Marauder or the Hatchet Man, or preferably both, before I go after the Awesome. I'm keeping myself next to two high stuff that's between me and the Awesome, and I'm trying to block his line of sight. And I'm focusing on the two softer targets that are nearby, right? I'm not necessarily trying to get into close range with them, but if I can, I will, right? And then once I've dealt with both of them, preferably, I'll go and I'll sprint at that Awesome and I'll get into close combat with him. I'll get behind him, which with that much more speed, I should be able to do fairly easily. And I'm coring that rear armor out and I'm killing him, because no matter what his front armor is, he's still only got 19 and 10 on his rear panels, right? If I do it the other way around, if I take the Awesome down there instead of the Marauder, then with that Mad Cat, if I'm the Mad Cat driver, before the Awesome gets into like near combat line of sight, that sort of thing with me, I am going to long range fire at that Marauder and I'm going to try and take him out. I'm going to try and call one of those rider left torsos out and do some damage. I'm going to try and get the left torso because that's where all the AC-5 ammo is, but I'm just going to try and pour damage down on him. Now, remember, they've got two LRM-20s and two ER large lasers. The ER large lasers go to 25, the LRMs will go out to 21, so I can probably get a few shots off without seriously overheating before I get into close combat with that Awesome. Once I am near enough to that Awesome, if I'm that Mad Cat guy, I am right behind that Awesome. That is where I'm going, that is where I'm staying. I will get myself behind him, in the hex directly behind him, and I'm staying there. Now, why am I doing that? Because of the way the Awesome is set up, right? If I am directly behind that Awesome, he's got I think I worked out a 10 to hit me, right? Let's pretend we both have to run to do this, right? Let's pretend we're average pilots. We both have to run and we're both at point blank range, right? So as the Mad Cat, I've got my 4, right? Plus 2 because I had to run, 6. And that's it. 6s, right? And I have got so much weaponry on board that I can just shoot at him. I can do it without having to overheat. I can drop this guy so fast it's not funny, right? But me personally, I'd creep that target number up to a 7. I said it was 6s, didn't I? Yeah, so I'd creep it up to a 7 and make the Awesome a secondary target. If I haven't dropped the Marauder by now, I'm going to focus my long range fire on him and I'm going to secondary target the back of the Awesome with like a medium laser or something, right? Because I can still hit him on a 7 and he's not going to be doing what you want him to do. If I'm directly behind that Awesome, the Awesome starts with a 4. Assuming he's had to run to try and outmaneuver me, which he hasn't managed, but assuming he's trying to run, he's then a 6. And then he's got a... Let's be generous. Oh, I didn't include the... So let's pretend the Awesome got a 1 as well. So it'd be a 7 base, and then secondary target would be an 8. Because let's say he's generated a 1 for his target movement or whatever. Let's say I've generated, say, a 2. Right, that's not beyond the realms of possibility. A 2 is only, what, like 4? I think it's 5. Yeah, 5 gets me a 2. So 4 is the cutoff. 5 gets me a 2. I'm pretty sure I could move 5 and manage to maneuver behind that guy. So let's say I get a 2. So the Awesome starts with his 4. 2 for running, that's 6. 2 for my movement, that's 8. And then he's got minimum range, right? he's got minimum range and he's only going to be able to hit me with 2 PPCs rather than his full 3, because while I'm standing behind him, he can only get the right arm and the right torso into the arc, right? They're the only 2 that he can hit me with, and he's going to need to do it on an 11 because they're at +3. He can't punch me because he wants to fire that PPC, and that's the only arm he can get in the arc, and he can't kick me because I'm right behind him, right? So he's got 2/3 of his firepower. I've cut 1/3 of his firepower out just by standing right behind him, right? And he's got to get an 11. If I don't move quite that far, maybe a 10, right? But 10's even if I don't move much at all, he's still going to get a 9, right? Compared to my 6s, 5s or 6s, right? But if we're both building up target movement modifiers, then I'm looking at 7s and 8s, and he's looking at 11s, right? So, yeah. Whereas if I stand him on a hill, right, even at long range, I can hit on 11. I can be 18 hexes away and hit on 11. So let's say that the Mad Cat is moving around. He's generating, say, a 2 or a 3. Let's call it a 2. He's having to mix it up with the other 2 guys while I'm shooting at him here. He hasn't managed to get behind anything. I'm standing still. He's moving at a +2, right? So I've got my 4. I've got 4 for long range. That's 8 plus his 2 is 10s. Right? There's nothing between us. There's nothing that can give him cover. He hasn't managed to do that. I'm looking at 10s. If he's got a +1 from some woods or something, then I'm looking at 11s. Right? Now that's not good. Right? But all of my front armor is facing the enemy. Okay? All of my front armor is towards him. So if he does start shooting at me, I'm tanking that on my front armor. And as he gets closer, my target number is only going to go down. If my unit mates can get him to move slower or move closer to me, then I can ping him even more. And the big bonus is I can do that 3 PPCs every turn for 3 turns, and then switch to 2, and then 3, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 2, instead of only having 2 at a time, right? Do I think that's the optimal way to play? No, that's just how I do it, right? I have walked awesomes down and started bashing on and trying to get close range combat with them, right? I don't tend to do it because the minimum range worries me, but I do use it. I do it, and it is a valid tactic, 100%. But when I've got an awesome, what you will see in our battles, that is generally how I use them. I find a high spot that has a good coverage, that I can get solid shots on things for a decent number of turns, right? And then I'll go 3 shots, 3 shots, 3 shots, 2 shots, 3, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 2, until things get mixed up and I'm starting to lose targets, or I'm taking too much damage, or things are getting a lot closer, and then I'll start adjusting, right? But generally speaking, anything with multiple PPCs, I would usually use at a distance. And that's why the Marauder would go down to the bottom level and start mixing it up with the Mad Cat, because I can keep him out of minimum ranges if I'm careful, right? And I can use that way. But yeah, that's I mean, that was a long tirade about probably absolutely nothing. But this is one of the comments that made me think maybe I should do tactics and just put some things out there. So if you are watching our battle reports, we are going to do more battle reports, and you see something where you think you might do it differently, put a comment down, right? Let people get that extra advice, let them get that extra thought process going, because for the new players, exposure to all of those sort of different ideas is a good way to come across the knowledge that it really is up to you how you do it, right? It really is. It doesn't have to be a set way. You don't have to play optimally. You don't have to play by the numbers. You don't have to play by the min-maxed sort of things that you get. The only thing you have to do is follow the scenario restrictions and follow the rules and house rules that are being used. If you can do that and pull off any tactic, then you go for it, right? There are like different things out there that are like different versions of things. You know, there's lots of different people telling you lots of different things. Because it is a very numerically based system, there will be a lot of tactical advice that will boil down to the same thing, because they're all trying to get optimal like effect from a given unit. So a lot of stuff will come down to basically the same advice. But my advice is that you treat it all as advice, right? Not, this is a hard and fast way to do this. This is the only way to do this. This person said this, so I'm going to like treat that as gospel. It is all advice. Try it, see how you go, right? As long as you are not fussed whether you win or lose, try anything you want, right? Cover your thing in LRMs and run it down to point blank and see what happens. Like I say, it's valid. Do I think it's a good idea? No, but it's valid, right? Anyway, that's an hour. My throat's getting dry. I'm going to fill my water bottle back up and try the second video of this. If you guys do make it all the way through this, then like please let me know if this is a good idea or not. I did say the notebook ones would be longer, and this is kind of a notebook series one. Just on tactics and my thoughts on it. Hopefully I haven't waffled too much and you've all stayed riveted to the screen or the speaker, as it were. And hopefully you'll come back for the next one. Appreciate you guys listening, watching, sticking with the channel. It's very cool of you. Thank you very much. To everybody that subscribed, thank you very much. And yeah, you guys stay groovy, and I'll see you in the next one.